This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I told you guys.
You're spaced
I'm
out.
zoning in, zoning out, zoning in, zoning out. Oh my God. Even the coffee is not even helping.
Were they legal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
okay.
just for the Homa. But then you guys advised me during the break, I shouldn't take that before. I should take that after.
Yes.
Then I made a mistake, took it on an empty stomach.
Oh, no. Yeah, see now,
So I'm
afterwards.
fighting it.
Don't worry. We'll make sure.
We call Evelyn to beat you
Bill
on
is
the
on
side
me.
of the head.
Bill is on me today.
I can volunteer. You can, there's a slap competition.
Yeah.
I can volunteer. But then I also do the same thing.
So that you-
mbili mimi ni moja tu.
So that you
Okari,
can
Bill is
stay.
on me today, yeah? So you empty stomach, Bill on me after the show. So.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Ndo is not in this mix, yeah?
Nani Ndu?
Yeah.
This
No,
just you and I.
bromance. Me, I am a choir member. I
she'll
am
be
fanning.
news desk.
I am.
News desk cartoon.
Oh, she'll be busy doing news. You'll be busy doing lunch.
I'm fanning the flames of this bromance. Me, it's okay. You guys carry on. Go you forth and prosper.
So you've
Please.
got your blessings.
Thanks. You have my blessings. Please just go ahead and be sure to tell me how it went
All right.
later on and try not to fight. So we're having a conversation. Did you know that? So it's been over last week, the former Defense CS, Eugene Wamalwa, was giving word to the present Defense CS, Pantuya. And he said a number of things. He said, how can it be that in Kenya at this moment, that there are supposedly foreign forces operating in the northern part of Kenya and are keeping people scared? Children are not going to school. They've brought the conflict from outside the country into the country, and we are just kind of sitting back and allowing all of this to go on. He said, no, come on, we can't have this be the case. It must get better. This forms the basis for the conversation that we're having this morning, because it would appear as though things are not quite, and we'll give a bit of a rundown into what is happening in Mandera. So the question is that how is it possible that foreign forces are in the country to the point whereby people are living in fear, some cannot access their farms, children cannot go to school. There has been a demand on the government to withdraw the military personnel. Also, we heard that last week Mandera Governor Aidan Khalif raised an alarm on the presence of the Jubaland forces in the country, rather in the county, stating that school children had been misplaced to allow their training. You understand? They were coming for training in Kenya, so children could not go to school. There's certain things that are going on. We're getting into this conversation this hour and trying to then ask ourselves certain questions about what happens when this security in one way or another is compromised. Joining us this morning is our brother, because he's a journalist first. Jono first, and then he's a member of parliament for Wajir South. Mohammed Ado is here this morning. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning, bro. How are you?
Very well. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Karibu sana.
Meshukuru.
Mashukuru sana. Let's welcome you to today's program with today's proverb. Dennis will share that, and we'd love your interpretation of it.
Yes, so today we are in Morocco, and just a few facts about Morocco. Now, it's one of the world's oldest monarchies, with a history stretching back over 12 centuries. Now, the city of Fez is home to Al Karawiyyin University, founded in 1859 after the death of Christ, AD. Wow. Right, and is considered to be the oldest existing university in the world. So when you talk about university education, tertiary education, it started where? In Africa, where? In Morocco. Now, Morocco's culture blends Arab, Amazigh or Berber, African and European influences because of their proximity to Spain. It's just 13 kilometers to that country. But let's go to the proverb of the day today. Whoever has parents has wings. Whoever has parents has wings. How would you interpret that?
Wings.
Wings, mabao.
Indeed. That's very true, because even at that late stage in life, sometimes you miss your parents. Those of us who both their parents have died. Yes, parents enable you to do a lot. A lot. And you can understand the stark difference between an orphan and somebody whose parents are alive, like day and night. So yes, it means you have a lot more in this world if your parents are right next to you and supporting you through life, especially in the early years until you can find your footing.
That's great.
Interesting.
Well, let's look into this situation, shall we, in what's happening in the north. And it has taken on a different kind of persona now. The county government of Mandera is making a claim that Jubaland forces could essentially be in training in northern Kenya, and that training for whatever purposes, but training all the same. And what this has done is that it has caused a situation of unrest in the region, whereby school children now are afraid to go to school, while families are then keeping their members close as possible. And this particular training is supposed to be for training against Al-Shabaab militants, but it is happening in what would be residential, school-going market areas in the north. Mohammed Khalif, who is the county governor, claimed that the forces were operating in Border Point 1 primary school, a move that has resulted in the closure of the institution and threatened Kenya's sovereignty and territorial integrity. That why should you have these forces here? So the closure of the school, he said, would affect students, which is obvious. And he said Mandera cannot be turned into a battleground for Somalia. We have no interest in Somalia except for peace. If the forces are not removed immediately, we will take action ourselves. We can go into more of the details in terms of what's happening, but we know that this is a group coming out of Somalia, and this is what they do. With this training taking place, have we heard that this is actually the case? Are they training here? Did they come for?
I find it.
Did they come for a visit?
I find it quite absurd that somebody is claiming the Jubaland forces are training in Kenya, because the information I have, and I have relatives in Mandera, and I've been following the story there, is that the forces who are in Kenya ran there for their own lives. They were forcefully ejected by an opposing group that took control of the border town, the town on the other side of the border, Beledhawa. And the ones currently in Kenya are the forces of Jubaland, loyal to the Jubaland administration in Kismayo, which, as you know, is allied to Kenya.
Yep.
So if they are training or preparing to wage an onslaught on the people who took the town from them in a bid to recover it from them. But I don't think this is just, a conventional training sanctioned by the Kenyan government, which is taking place there. And it shouldn't be taking place in residential areas and in schools and public areas. I would say this is just an unraveling of that thought that we were going to put a buffer zone inside Somalia to try and take...
To ward off Al-Shabaab?
To try and take the war as far away as possible from Garissa, Wajir and Mandera. But the exact opposite is happening in Mandera particularly, and it's very unfortunate. And we call on the government to deal with this matter once and for all.
But KDF does work with Jubaland.
The people of Mandera have every right to live in peace.
Sure.
And the government has a responsibility to ensure that.
KDF does work with Jubaland forces. We've known this before. They've worked together.
The KDF forces in Somalia are part of the African mission.
AMISOM, yeah.
It was AMISOM, now it's ATMIS.
Yeah.
Which is really struggling financially because it's not being funded very well. Individual countries that have forces in Somalia are being forced increasingly to take a huge burden, financial burden, to keep their forces there. And all this emanates from the 2011, Kenyan invasion of Somalia, as many would like to call. We had three promises. The three promises were security, that a buffer zone will be established deep inside Somalia to ensure that the spillover, any spillover, does not affect people, Kenyans living along the borders. The second one was economic. There were promises to link Kismayo and Lamu and make this area an economic zone that was going to be of great value economically to the people of Kenya and people who live in Northeastern. That has not come to pass. And then there was the diplomatic part where Kenya, a democratic nation living right next door to what was largely a failed state, could play a very good role in ensuring the peace and tranquility comes to Somalia. And also Al-Shabaab were rolled back and taken away from key regions like the Middle Juba region, Lower Juba region, Gedo, to ensure that they do not control not just the roads but also towns and defeat Al-Shabaab once and for all. That somewhat been achieved. Kenya has been very effective in decimating the leadership of Al-Shabaab, particularly in airstrikes. A great deal of progress has been achieved in that sense. But Al-Shabaab is not out. Al-Shabaab is still there. It controls much of the hinterland in southern Somalia. And so all three objectives for the 2011 incursion in Somalia, not achieved yet, and still very much a work in progress.
Who makes up the Jubaland forces, Mohammed?
The Jubaland forces, it's made up of clans, clan militias who've been amalgamated into what is now being called the Jubaland forces under the leadership of the regional president, Ahmed Madobe, who is a close ally of Kenya. But there's been so much emphasis and concentration on Kismayo alone that huge swathes of Jubaland have been forgotten, and where Shabab are running, amok. Buale, which is not far from the Kenyan border, is still firmly in their grip, and so are the major routes, leading to Kenya. They don't do much in terms of stopping traffic because they are collecting money from passengers and the traffic plying these routes, which is one of the ways in which they continue to fund their activities. But there is a need to move beyond Kismayo. There is a need to move, towards chasing Al-Shabaab out of the area, because right now they're sandwiched between Kismayo, which is, has a presence of African Union peacekeepers, Kenya, from Kenya. And then on the other side, we have the Kenyan forces along the border. And in between is a no man's land controlled by Al-Shabaab. So the security situation is still very dicey for us. And that is why you're seeing all this. But then there's also the other problem, the elephant in the room, which is the tussle between the center and the periphery when it comes to the government in Mogadishu, which slowly wants to exert its influence across the country. Now, the government in Mogadishu is not in good terms with our man in Kismayo. And that is what is creating the current problems and conflict that we're seeing in Gedo region, and particularly in the town of Bulahawa, something that has resulted in the spillover of defeated forces coming into Kenya and putting our security and tranquility at risk. So there is also need to have the government in Mogadishu and the regional states like Jubaland agree on working together. That has been elusive so far.
But this, Mohammed, you've been to Somalia so many times. There's a period, I think I even reached out to you when covering the story of Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And I've been to Jubaland a few times. And I've flown to the northern part of Somalia. The thing that I find interesting is, because in your last statement you said it's going to be elusive. The central government, because Jubaland is an autonomous federal member of Somalia. The thing is, the central government and Jubaland, from the word go, there's never been any agreement on anything. As a matter of fact, how Madobe then is looked at is he's an ally to Kenya. There is the security question. When KDF was now part of AMISOM in Jubaland, what I observed was, and I asked a lot of people around, how long do you think you're going to stay here? and nobody had an answer. How long? And how long? The reason I asked the question is, what I found interesting, it was almost creating a new outfit where you had even the Kenya police inside Jubaland training the police in there, and they were embedded. The military doing the same thing. And this was to then, at some point, once the units have numbers, then they're able to either protect themselves, man installations, infrastructure, all by themselves. But that doesn't seem to be happening. When you cross now to Kenya, what maybe you can paint the picture for us, because a lot of people who've never been to that part of the country don't understand when we talk about a border, how does it even look like?
It's porous.
It's porous. There's an assumption that either there's a fence or a wall, but it's no man's land. You can't even tell whether you're inside Somalia or you are actually inside Kenya. How dangerous is it? How porous is it? To the extent that now we can have a conversation that there is a training going on in the Kenyan part of this conversation, and not a lot of people are aware how that border looks like or what goes on there.
The border is long, very long, and quite porous. Our only saving grace so far has not been the so-called buffer zone or effective policing by Somali authorities on the other side of the border. Our saving grace has been our public, the Kenyan public, who've so far been our first line of defense, reporting anything suspicious or any activity that's going on at the border back to our forces. Look, from 2011 until now, the difference, that danger, that threat that sent our forces angrily across the border is by and large still intact, because Al-Shabaab is still very much alive and kicking. Do we have partners on the other side of the border? That is a question for debate. And you could debate about it until the cows come home. Are we doing enough? Again, that is a matter for debate. What I would say is there is need to reimagine and relook at what our interests are. I'm sure they're still the same as when we angrily crossed the border to try and establish that buffer zone. The threat coming from that center-periphery conflict between, and by the way, Jubaland is not autonomous, or even semi-autonomous.
On paper.
On paper,
Yeah.
it's not. But it largely operates on its own whim. And so does Puntland, and so does every other regional state established in Somalia ever since the Baghdadi conference in Kenya. What we have is a jumble of regional groups that are operating on their own whim, very little connection with the center trying to assert itself, and when it fails, using clan divisions to sow even more conflict. And you can imagine that, to sow even more discord.
Yep.
And this is exactly what is happening in Jubaland, because the government in Mogadishu is currently working with one of the clans, the clan that largely inhabits the Gedo region, to try and destabilize whatever little administration that Ahmed Badobe and his Jubaland administration have been able to establish in the pockets they control of Jubaland.
So let's talk about the presence of the Puntland army in the country. And one would assume that if they had run towards Kenya for safety, that the first place they would have gone to is Mandera camp, or they would have gone to the nearest KDF camp, because those are their peers. But even that aside, then there is the diplomatic circles where they play in terms of how long they're going to be around. If they needed help from Kenya to be able to go back and deal with the enemy. Are you aware of any discussions around these that is happening? And if not, from where you sit, now that the the enemy has managed to push the Puntland army to the country, isn't thus then creating fear on the locals? Because if an army was sent away to Kenyan borders, what makes us think that the enemy would not come to this side of the country and deal with the army?
I mean, it's happened many times before. You know, when Siad Barre was escaping Somalia, Aidid came into Mandera chasing his forces. It's happened before. It's happened many times after that. If your enemies are running into another territory, then the chances of it just depends on how confident those other guys are in their strength. They could easily come in and follow and make our land, our nation, another platform in which they settle scores. That is a dilemma that people of Mandera and other parts of the region have faced many times over. And there's a real possibility of that. And there is a need to deal with it. That's why we're saying, as the leadership of Northeastern, we need this issue dealt with as quickly as possible so the people of Mandera can go back.
Are we seeing any movement from the military in the country, KDF, because that's their role in terms of protecting our borders? Are we seeing deployment of army to go help and secure the border?
No. There is a lot of movement of our own troops. KDF are stationed actually in Mandera, and so far they've done a great and stellar job policing and securing our borders.
Right.
They also do a number of attacks from the air against Al-Shabaab. That's why I was saying that there's been real progress made by KDF forces, both those stationed here and those part of the African Union mission. But there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Let me ask you a question, Mohammed. Progress in what sense? Because if we hear complaints from Mandera itself, and as far as the county governor, stating that there is a situation of fear or unsettledness in the area because of the presence of forces. You can imagine what it is. You walk into anywhere, it could be you, anybody. You walk into a situation where there are armed forces in the area. The unease is palpable, right? So, in terms of something that has been done to ensure what you have said, that there is, calm in the area, what is this that has been done? One would imagine that the removal of those forces from the area would be the thing that would be necessary.
The removal of the forces will be the most ideal and the most urgent step the Kenyan government should take.
Why isn't that
And
done?
we are surprised that hasn't happened up until now. We don't know what those forces are doing there. Yes, we know they belong to a region that, we have so many dealings with. But that doesn't give them the blank check to come into our territory, settle and unsettle our people. That, I would say from the rooftops. What I am referring to in terms of progress made by KDF is real frontline progress against Al-Shabaab, and particularly in the airstrikes against the group and the group's bases and the leadership of the group. That is something KDF has achieved over the years, and they need to get accolades for.
Don't you think it looks as though there is a welcoming of... it's clear that the Jubaland forces are not... they're at loggerheads with the government in Somalia, and we're going to put that in air quotes.
Yes.
That is very clear. And we also know that the Jubaland...
No quotes needed.
No quotes needed. There you go. And it is also very clear that KDF, which, whether you look at it any way, you want to look at it on Sunday or Tuesday, has been working with Jubaland. Now, when you want to look at it in an unconflict situation, where there are two armed forces working with each other, the truth of the matter is that perception will be that Kenya has taken sides with this group that is anti-government in Somalia. Yes or no?
Look, that confusion is a hallmark of Somali politics. The more you look, the less you see. That is actually that's where it starts, understanding Somali politics. So it's a jumble of so many things, and look, the Kenyan government has a responsibility first and foremost to protect its civilians and its territory. We cannot say we are having a buffer zone, deep into Somalia, when that problem we are trying to avoid
It's playing out in Kenya.
is home. So that is one point I'd like to raise. The second point is there is a problem between the government in Somalia. Actually, the militias who chased away the Jubaland forces from their territory and their areas are actually, they have the overt support of the government in Mogadishu. And that every Somali will tell you. They have complete support. And because they are at loggerheads with a man who controls Jubaland, the president of the Jubaland administration. What Kenya can do is try to broker some sort of an agreement between the center and the periphery, Jubaland and Mogadishu.
But that has failed numerous times.
Yeah, but you cannot stop. Look, if this is going to have such a huge impact on your well-being and security and peace and tranquility, you can never stop. And there are no other ways, because what will the Kenyan government do? Follow the ones who've been displaced and remove the Somali government? That's a declaration of war again. So that's what I'm saying. It's so confusing. There's so many moving parts that you cannot actually place your finger on something and say, this is where the issue is, because once you point out one thing, 10 other things appear.
But
You see, the
isn't-
problem,
okay, go ahead.
the challenge I have is the central government doesn't recognize Madobe. They actually don't. Kenya recognizes Madobe. The international community recognizes Madobe. And in having and in understanding the politics, then is thinking through what are the consensus. So you're going to have talks. All these issues we're discussing, they're deep-seated and embedded in the politics of Somalia. And like you said, it's very complex.
Yes.
Extremely complex. So in this case, if the central government then says, look, this is what we're willing to do, and it's clearly officially not to recognize Jubaland and Madobe's administration, because they look at him as a puppet. That Kenya is not going to do that. The international community will not even allow for that to happen. So this issue will just continue spiraling, and now the spillover is what we are now witnessing. Because if you're to, because the first thing you said in terms of the solutions, I remember you said is the creation of a buffer zone, well, deep inside Somalia. That can be one of the ways that this can work. Apart from now the economic question, and then the diplomatic conversation around this. But if you're to look at, and for purposes of somebody who's listening and watching to understand how deep this is, the issue of the border, Kenya and the Jubaland boundary is, like we said, porous. But then to understand the broader picture of this, it runs through arid and semi-arid regions. Then you have 3 counties. You have Mandera, you have Garissa, and you have Lamu counties. I've been to Garissa, I've been to the refugee camp many times. And when you talk to the people, they will tell you that it is so easy. And this is at the height when Al-Shabaab was very, very active. And I remember the conversation that it was so easy for anyone to cross from Somalia into the camp, have your meal there, have medication there, and then walk back. That's how easy it is. This is Garissa. Now, you look at Lamu counties, that's why you've always heard of issues in Lamu. Mandera, same thing, like Mohammed was saying, KDF is doing a good job around that area. But there's the conversation of how do you canvass these 3 very vast counties to create a buffer zone that is deep inside Somalia without the will of the central government and the clan politics. Because this has been going on for years and years and years since the civil war.
Yes, and the tug of war between the government in Mogadishu and the regional states is not just going on along our borders. It's also going on along, the Red Sea, side, the Gulf of Aden, Puntland, all that. There are problems everywhere. the federalism as adopted by Somalia doesn't seem to be working so well, because there's a center that wants to assert its authority, and there's always a pushback from the regional states. Now, what we need, as I said before, is a rethinking of what our role is with these problems, with the new realities, with the federalism problems that Somalia has. We need to rethink our approach. If we are just talking about a buffer zone and securing our borders without dealing with the economics of it and what we are gaining from it economically, as well as the diplomatic role Kenya can play, then it becomes a treadmill. We're not moving anywhere. We need to have quite a different approach in the way we deal with this issue. And again, not put all our eggs in one basket when it comes to seeking partners inside Somalia, because that's what we have done so far. And the solution doesn't necessarily have to be militarily. There are Kenyan Somalis on this side of the border who understand what's happening on the other side so well, make use of elders and the clan system to reconcile some of these people. And they are experts, people seasoned diplomats in Kenya who are of Somali origin and Kenyan, who've served this great country, who could lend their hand. But so far, we've looked at it as a military issue. No, it's not. It's political, it's diplomatic, and also we need to look at the clan nuances of it.
So,
if we don't have a much more pragmatic and wider view of the problem, and we look at it from the scope of military intervention, and it's not going to work for us. And eventually, what we were trying to escape back in 2011, it's already here with us. I don't want to look at it in the future. The threat is on Kenyan soil.
We knew this was going to happen because our entry then into Somalia was in reaction
to something similar.
To something similar. Exactly. And then years later, we're still having the same conversation. Yes. And this has been brought up so many times. What is the exit strategy? Now, the exit strategy, on one hand, is get everybody out. But then when you get everybody out, the economics you're talking about, there is no stability inside. And if there is no stability inside, it will spill over back into the country. So it's a catch-22 situation.
What have we done the years between 2011 and today?
Well, we've been, among other things, doing training.
Built a wall.
Which wall?
Was it never built?
Where is the wall?
There was justification for spend of a lot of money to have
my
that
border,
wall
my constituency has the longest border any constituency has with Somalia. I go there. I visit the place. I've not seen any wall.
Okay, so the money that was going towards building that wall didn't happen?
It was a small section.
Oh, okay.
It's a very, very, very small, limited section. Doesn't mean there is a wall between the entire breadth of the border between Kenya and Somalia.
So the point being that all of the interventions, a lot of interventions over years, and by your own admission, we see very little in terms of actual on the ground evidence of something that is working. And can you be in decades of conflict, and can you be in decades of interventions that bear no ground for us to then see that something is happening? Because we go back to the same situation. The Mandera governor is complaining today. People are complaining. Children are afraid to go to school. Kenya's fighting a war that is not its own and can't seem to get away from it.
Yes. As I said before, what have we done in the years between now and 2011?
One would imagine that maybe Kenya wants to be in this war. One would imagine that maybe Kenya wants to be in this. There is a position whereby...
I don't think so. No one wants to be in war in perpetuity.
There have been opportunity without number to make a very, very clear stance on the position that Kenya has taken as concerned this conflict. There have been peace negotiations that have taken place headed by Kalonzo Musyoka. There have been many times where individuals, the clans, by your own admission again, who've said, let's come together and have this conversation. But Kenya keeps getting involved in a situation whereby it would look as though a clear cut needs to be made. And I can understand that the business of conflict is brick and mortar, but it's also very delicate in nature. That the things you do today could have a lasting effect on tomorrow. But there seems to be no clear cut. There is no incision that will separate Kenya from this thing. Is it because of the borders alone? Is there more?
It's because of how dicey the security situation is that Kenya might be thinking, and here I'm just, groping in the dark. Kenya might be thinking that better the devil you know. You understand? Better the devil you know in dealing with the individuals and the entities on the other side of the border. But that could be the reason why things are unraveling. I'm talking about how we have approached the whole situation from the beginning, and also disregarded the calls for change. You understand? We want to deal with Mogadishu. We also want to deal with the Jubaland administration. And I don't think we still figured out
where you are.
I don't think we've figured out where we are. And there's a need for all these three sections. Kenya, which is a neighbor state, which has a huge stake and interest in borderland security. The administration in Jubaland, which needs to assert its authority and reclaim as much land as possible from Al-Shabaab so that we achieve that peace we are looking for. The government in Mogadishu, which feels it has a responsibility over its regions, and, the many pockets of Somalia where there is, so many regional governments, and they want to assert their authority there, but are finding it quite difficult because some of these entities are allied with governments in the region and feel, the government in Mogadishu might not have much to offer them. All this now need to be amalgamated, and we need to come up with a clear policy, first of all, from our end on how to deal with all these moving pieces. And also, at the same time, achieve, that, dream or that objective that we first went into Somalia for.
You see, well, Mohammed, when you're having this discussion earlier, you said that these conflict has been seen as though it's just militarily. But now here's a question that you raise in terms of we can use the clans, we can use the elders to walk in, and because they understand each other, these are just the same people. It's only a border that is splitting them. But now, even as that is a way that we're supposed to look at it as leaders from the region. First of all, is this a proposal that is on the table that you've shared with the government in terms of this is what the government stands for? We are from the region. We understand our people better. Perhaps look at these other alternatives that would not come to compete, but would come to reinforce what you're already doing. So are we looking at a government that would look at that option as a possible solution to the conflict we see today?
I think there's very little understanding in Kenya about the events, issues, and personalities, history in Somalia. And there's very little room for, advice or, coming in from the outside. It's all, this tunnel vision that we have about this country. There's very little understanding. I'll tell you. There's a better way of dealing with this issue. And we should be more open-minded than we are. That's what I will say. Yes.
You earlier said something interesting. You said one of the ways this can be better be handled, you said there are people from this side who really understand the politics there. Like you're saying, a lot of people don't understand the politics. You said the elders who belong to different clans.
No, but sometimes the same clans on the other side.
Yes.
Do
you feel the government utilizes that opportunity then to have key people? This is still diplomacy, but the diplomacy, as we understand, is sending somebody from government to deal with the government from the other side And all we know about these conversations, the Somali president has been in Kenya numerous times. There have been agreements, there have been conversations. But then when the president goes back, these issues still continue. Do you feel that there is a room that then you can have these elders who may not necessarily work for government, but these are leaders from this side who understand the clan politics, who can then go and arbitrate, go to the other side and have conversations?
I mean, it's happened before, and it's worked wonders. The late Yusuf Haji was, a good diplomat in calming the nerves whenever things spiraled inside Somalia. He's been very effective in bringing about peace in the Somali region of Ethiopia. So Kenya can play its diplomatic role in the region and the peacemaker role it has always played using the resources available.
Without letting troops or forces into residential areas in bordering towns.
That could have been avoided. That could have been avoided if the simmering undercurrent that we've witnessed for months in the Gede region and the conflict that was boiling between Kismayo and Gede region were dealt with and nipped in the bud before they turned into outright hostility. So we had months in which we could have dealt with this. Now it's on our soil. I still see that there is an opportunity to deal with it, but it just depends on how receptive we are to alternative thought. Look, the people living on both sides of the border are cousins. The border is a straight line drawn in between people who belong to the same communities. So people understand each other. They still have near and distant cousins on both sides of the border. Linguistically, they speak the same language. A lot can be achieved by cross-border dialogue. And yes, let's lose the military. Let's use our military might against Al-Shabaab because they're not ready to negotiate and we have nothing to negotiate about. Let's use our military might. But when it comes to clan conflicts like the one we are seeing right now, and let's look at the nuances of the conflicts on that side of the border, because ultimately they could have a huge ripple effect on the population on our side of the border. This is how insecurity begins. This is how cross-border conflict, spills over and causes mayhem. So we should not just have this military, a government-to-government approach. Let's also use the resources that are at our disposal. It's my advice.
Have you presented this to the government of Kenya, and what's the response?
I haven't had the chance.
Oh, why?
Haven't had the chance. I'm dealing with bread and butter issues of the people of my constituency. But again, I always.
But the people of your constituents now are staring at
Of
what
course.
could be what is a security matter,
Indeed,
and one
because
would
we're
hope
right at the
that
border, yes.
this is something that you present to the government and
Yes.
request that they move with speed with regard to that. So the reason why I'm asking that is to understand what the government of Kenya is doing at the moment to ensure, first of all, that the locals in Mandera are assured of their security and that a solution towards this problem is actually arrived at. So
I think there's only one solution to that. You cannot have foreign troops running amok on Kenyan territory. That is, not ideal in any way, shape or form. So, first of all, ship out these people. Take them wherever you want. We don't care. Let them return back and maybe even continue fighting. As far as we are concerned, we need peace and tranquility in our country. And so there is a great need, and an urgent one at that, for Kenya to remove the troops. Yes.
Yeah.
But who are these troops?
These are the troops from the Jubaland administration in Kismayo.
And then my question then is,
Yes.
how can Kenya not take sides? Because it's siding with Jubaland.
It is.
These are Jubaland troops in
KDF
Kenya.
and Jubaland work together.
And the conversation here is, like you said, understanding the
Are you
politics
looking
of
for me to
Somali.
say Kenya is taking sides? Is that what you're seeking? Because that seems to be the case.
No. I'm just wondering,
Yes.
how can Kenya then not take sides? Because there's this silence,
I don't know.
seeming silence.
Look, all we're saying as the leadership of Northeastern is,
Yes.
we don't care whose side you take. but we don't want foreign troops on Kenyan soil.
But surely it
You
goes a little
don't
bit
want-
deeper. This is it. It could go a little bit deeper than that. From a residential point of view, and I was coming to the end of the residential point of view, it is scary. We're talking about children who don't go to school.
It's beyond
Schools have been
scary.
closed,
Scary
right?
is another statement.
There are people who cannot go to markets.
Yes,
There are
it's
people who cannot-
dangerous.
It's dangerous,
Yes.
right? But imagine a situation where I have a compound and I leave the gate open, or maybe the fence has some holes, and I know very well that people are coming through those holes. But here they are, and the normal operations within my compound cannot carry on. But I don't seem to have a problem with it. That happens, and it's been for 30 years. This fence has had holes in it. Sometimes I leave the gate open. People can come in and do what they want. Every now and then, I even open my door and I invite them into the house for tea. And then I tell them, oh, actually, you know what? You can't come in for tea often, but you can play in the compound. The fence still has holes. The gate is wide
Do you
open.
visit your neighbors?
Do you
Do you
think-
visit your neighbors?
No. How do you think...
And do you see how they're dealing with their fence and
Mohammed,
Porous
how-
gates?
if I have this compound and there are people who come into this fence all the time, does it really look as though I, the owner of the compound, is not welcoming these guys to come in whenever they want? Doesn't it look like that?
Choices have consequences?
Perception in conflict is very, very critical.
Yes.
That's what it looks like.
You're right, but as I was saying, you're seeing your weak gate and the porous fence and all that. How are your neighbors dealing with it?
They're kicking them out.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's how it is supposed to be.
Wajir South constituency, the Member of Parliament is Mohammed Ado. He's been here with us this morning. This conflict's still going on, but necessary for us to have it in the open with these conversations. Santi Sana for being here.
Thank you.
Good morning, 8 a.m.
Sam.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.